You might think that the blue sky is really blue, but it's not. It's actually more like purple. We just interpret it as being blue because our brains have been tricked into thinking that it is. So what other ways does our brain trick us when it comes to color? And how do massively powerful brands like Apple and Coca-Cola use the secrets of color psychology to influence how we feel and behave? Now, if you've ever taken an introductory psychology class, you probably learned about the physiology of how we see color. Visible light enters the eye and hits the retina, which contains photoreceptor cells called cones. There are 3 types of cones, each most sensitive to a different wavelength of light, and they send signals to the brain, which interprets them as colors. You probably also learned that there is a big difference between how we see colors and how we name them. For example, there are 2 different shades of blue that we perceive, but only 1 word for it. The same goes for blue and green. We can see both of them, but there's only 1 word for it in English, which is basically just a label we put on that color. But did you know that the way we name colors is actually quite arbitrary and varies across cultures? For example, in one Himba tribe in Namibia, there isn't a word for blue and green, but there are 2 completely separate words for yellow, which in English would be like calling both a banana and a lemon yellow. In another tribe in Papua New Guinea, the people living there see red and orange as completely separate colors, whereas for us, they're pretty similar. But when these tribesmen were shown colors and asked to pick out the ones that went together, they chose colors based on how they perceived them, not how we labeled them. This shows that the way we group colors together isn't universal. It depends on the language we speak and the culture we live in. But there are some universal characteristics of colors that aren't based on language. For example, no matter where you're from, if you see the color blue, you'll likely feel calm and relaxed. That's because certain colors evoke emotions in us, and those emotions are driven by our limbic system, which controls how we feel and is separate from the part of the brain that processes language. This means that certain colors can make you feel a certain way even if you don't consciously know why. One way that our limbic system uses colors to influence our emotions is by triggering memories. For example, if you grew up in the Western world, you might associate the color red with excitement and danger. That's because when you were young, you were probably taught that red means stop, as in stop your car when you see a stop sign or stop running into the street. But stop signs aren't red to stop traffic. They're actually red to make drivers feel alert and excited so they pay attention and stop. There are lots of other ways that our brain plays tricks on us when it comes to color. For example, check out this image. Do you see anything weird? How about now? What about this one? These images are actually all black and white, but because our brain expects skin to be a certain shade of brown or yellow, it fills in the blanks and makes them look colored. Our brain does this with other things too. Like in 2015, scientists at a university in Munich used functional magnetic resonance imaging to scan the brains of 18 volunteers while they looked at human faces. They found that even though the faces were all grayscale, the participants' brains still saw them as colorful. But you don't have to be a scientist to take advantage of our brain's quirks. Many brands use color psychology to influence how we feel and what we buy. For example, Apple uses white to suggest cleanliness, simplicity, and minimalism. That's why their products often come in white boxes. Meanwhile, Coca-Cola uses red to suggest excitement, energy, and passion. That's why their logo and branding are so vibrant. So the next time you see a brand or a color that you like, ask yourself, what emotions does this color bring up in me? Does it remind me of anything? And does it make me want to buy this product? Because even though we think we're making rational decisions when we buy things, our emotions play a huge role in what we choose. And many brands know exactly what colors will trigger which emotions. So, next time, before you fall in love with a brand, ask yourself, are you in love with the brand or just the color?